Curtis Calhoun here with MMA News, and my next guest is coming off a big win this past weekend, UFC Vegas 70. It's Ode Osbourne. How's it going, Ode?
It's going well, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks again for the time, man. I really do appreciate it. First things first, obviously Charles Johnson's a really tough opponent. Getting a big win over him is huge, especially for the division. What are your thoughts on your performance a couple days removed from the fight?
My thoughts were and are that I gave every fiber of myself to that fight. So I'm pleased, you know what I mean, with the outcome.
Now, I was about to ask you about that because your last fight against Tyson Nam, if I remember correctly, was on short notice. You had a really rough weight cut.
Yeah.
Coming into this one, was it much more gratifying being able to show that you can go the full distance in a fight and put on a performance like that?
Yeah, it was definitely. And, I have a new, I switched camps. I'm with Dewey Cooper now, Black Cobra. And, he'd been having me run the mountains every week. So that's different. I've never ran before in my entire fighting career. I've never ran. This is my first time in my life that I started running. And because no coach has really made me run before, you know what I mean? But Dewey, he's just like, you got to run, and not just run, but we got to run these mountains. And I was like, what? Mountains? What? And so, yeah, man, that guy was a Olympic cross country runner. So I knew he had cardio, but I also know that he wasn't running the mountains, so.
Do you feel that your new, strength and conditioning routine, you talk about the running and all that, do you feel like that really made a difference in this fight? Like, could you tell mid-fight that you were still, you still had that cardio?
Oh, hell yeah, it made a difference. You know what I mean? Because the thing about it is, when you're doing those 6 miles up the mountain, you face those demons, you face those trials and tribulations, you face those hard times. And so in my fight, I faced those demons as well. And I was like, nope, we've been here before. We can push through this, and we're gonna push through this. And we I had doubts, you know what I mean, started trying to creep into my head, and I was like, nah. I was like, go away. We got this. Let's go. We're gonna get this W, and so I did.
Absolutely, man. And what's the status of your eye injury? I saw you mentioned it in the post-fight press conference. Any update on that front?
I just have a little corneal abrasion. So far so good. Just blurry for a few days, and after that, smooth sailing. And once everything heals, I'll be okay. I have a couple stitches right here, from his kind of knuckle. When he hit me, his knuckle went, and then his thumb went right in my eye. But hey, it's a fight. Sacrifices must be made, I guess.
Absolutely, man. And I noticed you mentioned in the post-fight press conference as well how much it meant to you to get a win during Black History Month. I got to ask you a little bit about that. Like, how much do you feel like that meant to you being able to come out victorious, especially during this month?
You're the first person that asked me that, so thank you so much for that.
Sure.
And it's amazing because I did the samurai, the ninja. You know what I'm saying? I always do the ninja, and the story behind the ninja is way back when we were enslaved in Jamaica by the British. There was a tribe called the Maroon Ninjas, and just the Maroon. They added the ninjas in the end, but the Maroons used to go down to the plantations and fight at night and free a lot of the slaves, and they would put face paint on and do mud and, try to blend in. So they were like ninjas. And so that's why I do the ninja staff from the beginning of my fight, just, so people can be like, why does Ode Osbourne do that? And I can be like, well, let me tell you. So yeah, man, it's great to be able to put on as a Black athlete for so many athletes, especially not just Black athletes coming up, but all young athletes. You know what I mean? For me, that's the most important thing, is being able to pave the way for young athletes coming up, and seeing what I'm doing and being an inspiration to all those people that want to be something. They don't have to be a fighter, they don't have to be a cook or a chef. They can be whatever they want to do, but sometimes they lack the motivation because they don't see other people that look like them doing it. So I think for me, that's big.
Have you kind of noticed over, like the past few years, for example, that especially amongst black men and black women, like the sport has really captured the interest of that community and overall? Like, do you feel like it's kind of like the sport's blown up amongst black men and women?
I have, and not just black men and women, but Latin Americans as well, and different nationalities and ethnicities. I think the sport has really grown in that way, and I think it's so amazing. It's so amazing, and it's important. But man, that's what a difference. And I am honored to be able to come to this country at a young age and just create a name for myself. Because I came here with zero, nothing. And now, I have a name for myself that I'm building on slowly and create my legacy. So I think I'm so grateful for that, honestly.
Absolutely, man. You mentioned earlier how you've been working with Dewey Cooper. Obviously, he works with Bubba Jenkins and a few other fighters down there in
Mm-hmm.
Vegas. How much is that?
Cody Garbrandt.
Yeah. How much has that
Yeah,
impacted your training,
Fareed.
especially over the past few weeks and all that? Like, what has that whole experience been like?
Oh man, I don't really have to explain much. Just watch my fight. That's how much it really impacted my training. You know what I'm saying? You've seen a different Ode Osbourne in there this time around. You know what I'm saying? More calm, calculated, patient, but still aggressive and still pushing the pace and still exciting and still fun. And that's what it's gonna be like for the rest of my career.
No doubt about it. And I've been seeing you've been on the podcast grind as well. I saw you had Jamal Hill, I think, on the show
Yeah.
recently. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yes.
Like, how did you first get into podcasting? And do you feel like having a podcast to talk about fighting and all that has kind of changed your perspective on the sport and all that?
I wouldn't say it changed my perspective on the sport. I would just say it gives me a different outlet because sometimes when you're doing one thing all the time over and over again, you kind of get bored and you need a different outlet. And so I think that gives me a new. It's like therapy. You get a fighter on, you guys talk about random stuff, and you guys just vent kind of, and it's great. It's good to have that.
Absolutely, man. Last question for me. What are we looking at for the rest of the year? How many more fights you trying to get in there? Obviously, it's just a few days removed from the fight, but do you have anything in mind in terms of a return timeline or anything like that?
Uh, we'll just see how my eye heals up, and then we go from there. We'll take it one day at a time, one day at a time. Not trying to be too much in the future. I think that was my problem. So that's been my problem a lot growing up. Is I live too much in the future instead of living in the present. So I'm just trying to live in the present and taking life one day at a time. Carpe diem.
No doubt about it. I saw that you called out Matt Schnell after the fight. What excites you about that matchup, and how do you see that matchup playing out if it comes to fruition?
I think I want to start creating a name for myself, and I think doing that means I've always been the kind of guy. I want to fight all the best people. If you look at my resume, my rap sheet, I fight all the best people. But I also want to be the person that fights people that are exciting. You know what I mean? And I think Matt Snell is very exciting. He's an exciting fighter, and I think the crowd and the fans would love that fight because we would be so electric. You know what I'm saying? So I think it'll be an amazing experience for the fans.
Before we wrap things up here, I'll give the final word to shout out any sponsors you're working with. Shout out your podcast if you want, and I'll give you the final word.
Not much, man. Just big up to everybody, and Jesus is king. That's all I gotta say. Jesus is king.
No doubt about it. Well, Ode, I appreciate the time, man. Congrats again on the win, and I have a feeling we'll definitely chat again soon, man. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, man.